London, November 1896. The fog that evening was special, thick as a theater curtain, and just as impenetrable. A young reporter for the Times, Arthur Blake, sat in the last row of the Empire Cinema, watching the beam of the film projector cut through the darkness, turning into flickering images on the screen. The show of the Lumiere brothers' arrival of a train should have ended 10 minutes ago, but the film continued to spin. Something new appeared on the screen. The camera moved slowly along an unknown London street until it stopped in front of a brick building with the Empire sign. Arthur felt the hair on his neck stand on end. In the windows of the cinema, silhouettes of spectators were visible on the screen. One of them, sitting exactly in his place, slowly turned his head and pointed his finger straight into the hall. The missing cameraman. The next morning, Arthur came to the cinema again. Mrs. Glover, the cashier, threw up her hands when he asked about the previous night's showing. "Oh, sir, we haven't had evening shows since Mr. Denton weeded out the place. Former Empire cameraman William Denton had disappeared 3 months ago, leaving behind only a strange note: they want to be filmed." In his tiny room behind the projection booth, Arthur found a collection of film reels, all with the same title, The Real Audience. When he inserted one of the reels into the projector, an image of the same room appeared on the wall, but with a different cameraman, a man with unnaturally elongated fingers, who was methodically smearing the film with some dark liquid. At the moment when the figure on the screen raised his head and stared straight at Arthur, the projector suddenly switched off. Shadows on the film. In the Scotland Yard archives, Sergeant Collins showed Arthur a folder marked, "Special Cases." 6 projectionists have disappeared in the last year, he muttered, looking at the photographs. All working with new equipment. All disappeared after night sessions. Arthur noticed one detail in the crime scene photographs. Each one had a piece of film visible, and everywhere in the frame there were barely noticeable shadows, too tall, too thin, always standing slightly behind the missing. The strangest thing was discovered during the inspection of the last disappearance site, in the Royal Cinema. On the wall of the projection booth, someone had written in blood, "They want real faces." Night screening. Arthur decided to stay at the Empire after closing time. At midnight, the projector turned on by itself, filling the hall with a cacophony of creaks and hisses. An image of the same hall appeared on the screen, but completely filled with spectators. They did not move. They weren't breathing. They were just sitting there, staring ahead with empty eye sockets. As the camera on the screen approached the last row, Arthur saw himself, sleeping in his seat. And behind him stood a figure in black, slowly stretching out his hands with unnaturally long fingers. What was in the basement? The sound of breaking glass made Arthur turn around. The projection booth was empty, but the film was still spinning. In the basement of the cinema, he found something that made his blood run cold. Dozens of films, neatly hung on the walls, each with a photograph attached. The faces of the missing projectionist. And in the middle of the room, a new type of projector, connected to a strange device that resembled surgical instruments. On the table nearby lay neatly cut strips of human skin. The last frame. When Arthur got back up, the show was still going on. The screen was now showing his own face, close up, with an expression of absolute horror. "No," he whispered, realizing that this was not a recording. A camera somewhere in the theater was filming him right now. At the moment when a hand appeared on the screen with scissors ready to cut the film with his image, Arthur felt a sharp pain on his face. Blood filled his eyes when he saw them, tall, thin figures coming out of the screen. The last thing he heard was the creaking of the projector and a whisper, "Now we have a new face to show." Epilogue. In December of 1896, the Empire Cinema burned to the ground. A charred projector and several films were found among the rubble. When the police tried to look at them, all they saw was endless rows of spectators looking straight into the camera. And if you look closely, in the last row you can see the face of Arthur Blake. He is smiling.